Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Rebel TA podcast. You're here today with Ty Abernethy. Ty is the founder of Grayscale. Grayscale is innovating in the recruiting space, and they're solving problems for frontline hiring.
We are focused on helping solve hiring and onboarding challenges for large enterprise companies doing really high volume hourly hiring. Retail, healthcare, hospitality, manufacturing. We help eliminate friction, accelerate hiring, and create a better experience for the candidate, the recruiter, and the hiring manager.
I really appreciate that you position the candidate first in that sequence. When vendors build with that candidate experience in mind, you get a product that delivers results naturally. So I appreciate you as a founder building in that way.
What's fun about this moment is that the technology is moving so fast, so that what's possible today was not possible a few weeks ago. It's a fun time to be building and to be innovating. How can we reimagine a workflow with all that we have at our disposal?
Recruiters, do you know those moments where you're juggling 15 roles, 10 hiring managers, and 3 different outreach tools, and you just think, there's gotta be a better way to do this? That's where Grayscale comes in. It's an AI assistant built for recruiters, not just another generic chatbot. Grayscale lives inside your ATS, whether it's Greenhouse, Workday, or SAP, and it automates candidate updates, reminders, and outreach across text, WhatsApp, and chat. I've seen teams use it cut time to fill by 30%, and cut ghosting in half without losing the human touch. Because this isn't about replacing recruiters, it's about freeing them up to do the stuff that actually matters, closing great candidates. So if you're building a real talent machine, check out grayscaleapp.com and tell them Building the Talent Machine sent you.
Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Rebel TA podcast. You're here today with Ty Abernethy. Ty is the founder of Grayscale. Grayscale is innovating in the recruiting space, and this is a conversation I'm really excited to have because they're solving problems for frontline hiring, and we're out here at SAP Connect, where they're connected with a ton of different partners in the enterprise level systems that are helping recruiters hire more efficiently. So, Ty, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. Good to see you.
We met probably like 6 months ago, and the product really spoke to me in terms of the solutions that you're providing, the partners, the integrations, but also the industries that you're impacting. So where are you based? What are you working on? And what is Grayscale all about?
Yeah, we're based in Atlanta. We are focused on helping solve hiring and onboarding challenges for large enterprise companies doing really high volume hourly hiring predominantly. So that puts us squarely in the frontline space. We support brands in retail, healthcare, hospitality, manufacturing, travel, leisure, these type of industries where you have a dominant workforce that is frontline. And we help eliminate friction, accelerate hiring, and create a better experience for the candidate, the recruiter, and the hiring manager, which I know we'll talk more about in a little bit. But
I love it. And I really appreciate that you position the candidate first in that sequence. We think a lot about hiring solutions, vendors build for recruiters, for managing operation expense. But when vendors build with that candidate experience in mind, you get a product that delivers results naturally. So I appreciate you as a founder building in that way. And when I think about the use cases for Grayscale, it's actually very closely bookended to my experience hiring for those types of workers and having those challenges through digital transformation. How do we reach candidates? How do we deliver results quickly from a vendor perspective for hiring teams? So I'm really excited about it. I think the world is changing. Those are the types of positions that keep our everyday world moving. And I know you have an AI product. We talk a lot about artificial intelligence, displacing jobs, taking recruiter jobs. Who knows how it's all going to play out? But at the end of the day, the roles that Grayscale helps teams recruit for are the fabric of our society.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you talk about the candidate experience. I mean, you've been in the industry long enough to know that that's one topic that people love to give a lot of lip service to, but when it comes to making investments in software, it's kind of an afterthought, right? It's sort of the icing on the top, but it doesn't really, so we tried to build in a way that was candidate first from the start. And I think that's where it gets fun. When you're leveraging AI, you can do things that weren't possible before that drive the outcomes, but actually sort of center everything around the candidate. So we're excited about doing stuff like that does sort of create a bit more of a human-centered experience despite leveraging a lot of AI to help power the process. So Yeah.
Let's get a little granular out the gate. We're out here at SAP Connect. What is the integration layer with SAP, companies that use SAP? How does Grayscale actually work from a product perspective?
Yeah. So it's a good question. I mean, to kind of start off, we have designed the product to be a really simple overlay on top of an HCM suite. We integrate really deeply with the full success factors, sort of HCM, so like recruiting, their onboarding module, their employees product as well, Employee Central. But we're designed to really help sort of power all those moments that matter across the full life cycle. Now, we go a lot deeper on the recruiting side. That's where we got our start, and that's kind of where we think deepest about. But we're really designed to help support customers on their journey. And usually they'll start kind of thinking about the candidate and hiring experience first. And then once that's sort of in a good place, it's like, oh, now that makes our onboarding process look a little bit jankier than it did before. And so let's fix that. And then you do that and it's like, oh, well, post onboarding, we need a solution to be able to really just sort of take the HRIS experience mobile first and make it really frictionless for our managers and frontline workers to facilitate. So it's kind of the typical journey our customers are on that we're kind of helping support them across the life cycle. So
now I keep hearing about a high volume of applications flooding a requisition. When you think about those problems that a lot of recruiters are facing, is that something you're seeing with your clients that are hiring frontline workers as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's always the ebbs and flows of, one day you're trying to solve we need more candidates problem. The next day you're trying to solve what do I do with all these candidates problem, right? And so there's that natural ebb and flow. Like at this moment, most of our customers are inundated with candidates and they need ways to drive efficiency. You think about a world, we've got a retail customer that's got 50,000 hires. They hire 50,000 employees a year, so basically 100% attrition year over year. And for all of those roles, they're getting, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 applicants like per posting. So they're just like drowning in applications. And for them, it's like they complain about, one, they can't get through all those candidates. They're sitting there stale. They actually just have to stop at like a certain number. I think somewhere around like 50 applicants. They just like cut it off and they just start going through the ones they have and then just making decisions. And so all the other candidates that have applied, it's like, you're not getting them a fair shake at all. And you're creating a terrible experience because those are ones that, you've got a finite pool of candidates. Like in the future, those could be really great applicants for your roles. And so I think part of it's just like using AI to actually screen everyone that applies that meets minimum requirements. So get a thorough screen, follow up with them, move fast to get in front of people. So that's one of the benefits of leveraging like an AI agent is like being able to like you apply and then minutes to hours later, the agent's reaching out to screen and then if qualified schedule with someone on the team. So you can go through a much larger swath of candidates, find the ones that are most promising for your roles and move them forward faster to get them in front of a human as quickly as possible, right? And then the rest you can nurture, you can keep warm. There's a lot of really good candidates in that mix that you can then start to do something with in a way that's far better than just not responding and closing the rec. You know what I mean? So we want to kind of get to that point where it's like, what can you offload that like humans just don't have capacity to do that AI can help offload and in the process create a far better experience for your candidate, right?
So I'm excited about the use case for Grayscale because you're able to build something that solves a very real problem for candidates and for recruiters and for the CFO when they look at the cost of processing those applications. Why do you care so much? This is not your first rodeo in HR tech. You're building fast. You're moving at a velocity that larger enterprise vendors who service those types of roles can't move and build as quickly. So why are you doing this?
I started my career in recruiting, doing high volume hiring. For better or worse, that is where the good Lord put me to start my career. And once you're in a swim lane, you start seeing problems there. And I hated how transactional the whole process was. It just and you go through enough cycles and you're just like, this feels so broken. There has to be a better way to do it. And so yeah, started a couple businesses in sort of the HR tech space, sort of solving various different aspects of the hiring problem. what's fun about this moment is that the technology is moving so fast, so that what's possible today was not possible a few weeks ago. I mean, it's really a fun time to be building and to be innovating and to be really like latched onto a problem and like fixated on it, because suddenly it's like the ways you could solve those problems like now have changed a little bit, you know? And so it's fun to sort of put all the pieces on the table in this evolving landscape and say, how can we reimagine a workflow with all that we have at our disposal? And you know, with each passing day, there become more and more profound ways to do that. And so it's a fun time to be building. We do a lot with sort of the bleeding edge LLMs in the market, and it's just there's a lot happening right now, and so we feel like we're kind of on the forefront of experimenting and sort of working with customers to make sure that we're not getting too far over our skis, just like excited about the tech for the sake of tech, right? Like staying focused on the problems, which I find the closer you are to your customers, the more they'll keep you in check on that, right? But just being able to just to step back and like just have conversations with our customers around like the art of the possible, right? And it's through that is where you start to have these light bulb moments. And so for me, it's just like fun to, back to your question, like why do I do this? Why am I excited about it? It's just there's just a lot of, even today, with all the progress we've made in the last decade, candidate experience generally is terrible. The recruiter experience is generally awful. And for that manager at the store or the plant, like it's also terrible as well. And it's like, what have we been doing, people? Like everything still sucks. And so because it sucks so bad, and because most of our customers are enterprise, because their rate of change is slower, we just see a big opportunity to step in and make an impact. And that's exciting to me.
100%. I love that phrase that you just turned, the art of the problem. Recruiting is often considered an art and a science. Mm-hmm. And Grayscale is blending that science with the art through empathy. I think positioning candidates first,
love that.
Putting recruiters into aperture for their experience, even thinking about that frontline hiring manager who may be a non-desk worker. What is their experience like? What type of device are they using? How are they able to have a positive hiring manager experience that is going to reflect the employee value proposition to that warehouse worker or to that frontline worker in customer service or some sort of non-desk job? And I think we often fail to recognize the importance of human empathy in the hiring process. There's so much trust that goes into us getting to a handshake and me deciding to take a job with you. And that experience starts long before we even meet. And that's where the technology, I think, can help inspire recruiters to focus on the craftsmanship of what the art of recruiting actually is. And the other piece I wanted to hear a little bit more about is how you're thinking about the exact use case for Grayscale in the recruiter workflow. So Grayscale bolts on to the HCM, the HRIS, the ATS. How do those agents that you mentioned get deployed to help filter some of those candidates and surface top talent for those roles when a recruiter is inundated with thousands of apps?
Yeah, I agree completely that like the approaching the hiring process through the lens of like how, with empathy for the candidate, right? And empathy for the manager as well, I think can be very powerful postures to sort of enter as you're sort of thinking about the outcomes you're trying to drive, right? And so like for us, part of what we do with our customers, and I'll get into your question about agents in a second, but part of our work with our customers starts with just like a whiteboard, right? A clean slate. And it's like, and then it's like, what is the end result we want to create, right? What is that best in class candidate experience that your best recruiter on their best day can deliver? And then how do we work backwards to create that for every single person that interfaces with your brand in some way, right? Like that, and that's where it gets fun. And that's where I think it's, regardless of technology, what technology you use, it's like getting really tight on sort of what is the candidate experience and then what is a manager experience, right? That we want to deliver, and then kind of working backwards and then plugging in technology like agents to help support that. And so to your question about agents, so we have 3 agents that we've brought to market that are focused on the 3 different experiences we just talked about, right? So we got a candidate agent. It's basically sort of a candidate concierge that's designed to anything from pre-apply to a quick conversational apply process, answer questions, give status updates throughout the process so expectations are clearly set, helping remind and prep them for interviews, things like that. That's what our candidate agent's designed for. We've got our recruiter agent, which is designed to really help support recruiters, almost just like a personal assistant there to help screen candidates, whether more that can be through an automated voice AI screen or just a back and forth text exchange, schedule interviews on their behalf, and just various actions to sort of move the process forward. So think of that as sort of the recruiter assistant kind of helping out with all of those coordinator tasks.
That's Gracie.
That's, yes. And then we've got our hiring manager agent that we are just bringing to market that is really designed to wrap kind of fully around the manager at the store or the plant to really create a best-in-class experience for them, give them their own personal assistant in their pocket that they can engage with via text, via voice, and we can talk more about that experience if you want, but that's something that we're like really fired up right now is that manager experience.
Oh yeah.
And we just see so much opportunity to improve it, and we're really, really excited about the future and where things are going, so.
I'm excited about that use case for recruiting where the hiring manager is the human in the loop that pushes play on the automation and at their fingertips are a short list of qualified candidates ready to interview.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that because recruiting is a process first and a job title second. And there's no like recruiting rule that says the hiring manager can't be the human in the loop or they can't recruit their own recs.
Right.
Especially when the cost of processing an application can get very close to the hourly payroll operation expense of a recruiter working those recs. That's where the use case for agents at the fingertips of a hiring manager in that plant that you mentioned are so valuable, especially when you're talking to the CFO about integrating new technology and doing digital transformation.
Yep.
We're having these conversations where maybe the CHRO is part of artificial intelligence, digital transformation. So it's a fascinating use case. The empathy piece is huge. And I think that reminds me of this idea of human-centric AI first, where you just talked about first principles thinking. Let's map out the problem and the process for hiring a candidate for a job. Then let's deploy AI and agents in. A lot of folks are doing the vice versa, where it's like, hey, AI is this thing, let's do AI and go to market and figure out what tools can help us define a process. But I think it's because you've experienced what it's like to be a recruiter and you've built in this space before. This is not your first rodeo. Can you talk a little bit about that like human centricity building an AI company?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point you're making. And I think we build our product sort of knowing that just that the time that we're in right now, and the moment we're in is one where every company is on their own unique journey, right? Yes. And they're on a journey to not just deploy AI, but they're on a journey to transform the way they go about doing business, right? Like, and I think we are the early stages of a total transformation that AI will help facilitate, but it will transform the way we approach work. And I think that is happening specifically in the talent acquisition space. Slowly and surely, some industries, some companies much further along than others, we're all on this journey. And so we stepped back and said, okay, this is a moment that we need to make sure that we're bringing products to market that are very flexible to sort of meet the moment where we are. So what I mean by that is like our product can be used on one end of the spectrum, 100%, recruiter-driven, manual, slight automation. On the other end can be fully driven through agentic AI, right? So as we go back to that whiteboarding exercise, and like, what are we trying to accomplish? Like, we're thinking in terms of not just like, how do we dial up the knob on AI? It's like, all right, what are the needs? And then what do we need at what point in the process? And so sometimes that looks like the recruiter still very much involved in driving the process in various areas, and AI kind of layered in and some key points that are adding a lot of friction to give that recruiter greater leverage, right? So just it depends. And so back to your question on like the human-centered piece, we think about that through the lens of the recruiter. Like AI has to be sort of human-centered to them. It has to be to the candidate, right? So it has to create a human-centered experience. What do we mean by that is like it is candidate first. It is supportive, it's transparent, and it is also connecting human to human as quickly as possible in the process, right? So while, again, AI is great, we we still firmly believe in the importance of human to human. And so there's just a lot of friction between, I apply for a job and I am sitting down with a person, at the plant or facility. And we want to eliminate all that friction so we can get to human to human faster. So that human centricity is like very important to us. Back to the manager experience, we see despite the best efforts of recruiters, I mean, depending on what industry you're in, managers are either getting full support by recruiters or very little to none, and they're kind of left on their own, right? And so they're left on their own, having to navigate oftentimes these large, bulky enterprise ATSs, and they're, training after training, and with TA beating the drum on like needing to adopt the technology and use it properly because we don't get accurate data and all this stuff. And it's just it's an awful experience. But like, we understand why we need the data. We understand why the manager needs to do these things to stay compliant and whatnot. But it's a nightmare for the manager, right? And so, and this is where it's like, okay, like let's just, let's give every manager their own assistant. They can help make sure all the stuff's getting done that's gonna fall through the cracks naturally. Just have everything magically updated in the background in your ATS. So it's stuff like that that's like, that's a human-centered experience. Like the manager being the human we are wrapping around to support to eliminate friction and frustration because they have a million other things to do and hiring's just one of them. And so how can we offload and just create more headspace to show up present for their team, whether it's a new hire or someone in the interview process. Like that's the world we want to kind of usher in. And so, yeah, so long-winded answer, but we think a lot about this human centricity and the importance of it.
I love it. You've talked a little bit about how Grayscale integrates into the existing applicant tracking system and a lot of those legacy enterprise tools. What are some of the ATSs that Grayscale currently integrates with? It's the SAP ecosystem, it's Greenhouse. What are some of those partnerships?
Yeah, Greenhouse, SuccessFactors. We integrate with UKG. We integrate we're working on integrations right now with Dayforce and Paylocity. We integrate with Oracle, a recruiting cloud. And yeah, we're continuing to add more and more. So yeah, and Workday, obviously, as well. So I have a number of integrations that we can, let me run that back real quick. We integrate with the likes of Greenhouse, SAP you mentioned. We integrate with Workday, UKG. We're adding integrations with Dayforce and Paylocity. So yeah, we see a lot of opportunity to help serve our mission across a lot of different ecosystems, which we're excited about.
One of the case studies that really caught my attention with Grayscale is what you alluded to earlier, and it's the client that had 100% attrition with 50,000 hires and 50,000 onboards a year. That's an incredible volume. When I go to some of the HR tech conferences and hear some of the talks on stages of case studies, those are similar numbers. Mm-hmm. This is really impressive, Ty. Like, you're a small company. How did you catch up?
It's funny, your comment on us being small. I'd say we're scrappy, and we've always focused on a partner-first approach to go to market. So we really haven't been out there doing the rah-rah show. Our focus has just been on serving customers and serving partners really well. And so that's kind of kept us a bit of a low profile. But we kind of like being in that position. It allows us just to stay focused, and there's a lot of noise that can be distracting from doing the work. And so we're just kind of chipping away. But yeah, we've got some great, very large enterprise brands with some fantastic case studies behind them, customers with hundreds of thousands of employees down to local retailers with kind of smaller but just as important the story. And so we take, I think, the most pride in sort of hearing our customer stories. And yeah, so that's been fun. And yeah, we think we can go toe to toe with anyone else up on the stage on the big stage, so to speak. But
that's great. What are some of the customers that you're proud of working with that have seen the benefits of hiring and recruiting with Grayscale?
Yeah, we work with a lot of really exciting global brands doing really interesting things. We work with companies like Northrop Grumman, who are doing some really cool things and how they're transforming the hiring process. We work with brands like Dick's Sporting Goods, large sports retailer, brands like Quick Trip in the gas station retail space. And a lot of large manufacturers like Corning, for example, who's manufacturing glass for iPhones, for example. So just a lot of really cool stories, all very unique across different industries, but their common thread is they're large companies, they're dealing with high volume, and they're typically on a system that is not designed for workflow management in any degree. And so our agents can kind of plug in and sort of be deployed across these larger HCM suites to help eliminate friction throughout the process.
Oftentimes in the recruiting technology space, we talk a lot about companies and vendors that are solving problems for high-tech companies, B2B SaaS, software. I love the use case for solving problems for the other 10 sectors of the S&P.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the hiring manager experience for those types of managers, for people who hire frontline workers or manufacturing? It looks so different than if you're hiring a software engineer.
Yeah. Yeah, we touched on this a bit before, but yeah, I mean, the typical experience is one where it's like hiring is like one thing out of a million things that store manager or plant manager has to do. It's always a nuisance. They're always just trying to get that role filled like yesterday. And they're being pulled in a million different directions. You know, the nature of shift work, you've got managers slotted in, then managers slotting out, and this sort of handing the baton of like where we are in the process is always a bit of a dance. And so, yeah, we just see things break down over and over again, and hiring be just persisting as one of the most frustrating things that managers have to do dealing with frontline workers. And so for us, like what we're, the reality we try to create is one where that manager is fully supported throughout the day, and they need to do nothing in their core system, in their ATS. Like everything should happen magically. So for example, what could that look like? It's gonna vary depending on manager, but let's say I have my agent configured to where every morning at 8 a.m. I'm driving to work and I get a phone call from my agent. We talk back and forth, tell me about the day, what do I have going on? Who are the interviews I have? Can we reschedule so-and-so? Tell me what we liked about this one candidate. Like these type of things that allow me to get a download on everything I need to know, right? Either via phone or via text, or make adjustments to my schedule where needed. Hey, I need to reschedule this candidate, right? Gather feedback on previous interviews. So maybe after an interview, I get a call or a text, hey, how'd the interview go? And I can quickly just call back and say, hey, interview went well. I'm really interested in moving forward with Brandon. Here's what I liked about him. The agent's gonna probe to make sure we're getting, deeper, richer feedback, not just so we're following sort of those scorecards to make sure we're getting all of the feedback for compliance purposes. And because we all know as recruiters, it's just pulling teeth to get any kind of feedback whatsoever. So kind of doing that dance and then updating the ATS magically in the background, advancing stages, doing everything that needs to happen so that then TA has the data they need to then make more informed decisions on how to support them over time. So it's that kind of stuff. Like it can be facilitated via text, via phone. We've got a mobile app, but just however. But what you're not doing is you're not sitting in front of a desk. You are not having to plug away a kludgy software and try to update things when you get a few minutes on a lunch break, when you really want to be out puffing a cigarette, it's like let's untether these frontline managers from having to do this, just data entry and sort of like process stuff. Like let's just support them and let it happen magically behind the scenes, And that's what we want to do. Things like that. It's like, okay, now we can shift. And how does that impact an organization, right? You got thousands of locations, every manager supported to that capacity. Like, okay, now we're cooking. There's some that shifts the focus. It eliminates a lot of friction. It eliminates the number one most frustrating problem that these managers have. And now you can get back to focusing your efforts in a different way and showing up differently. And so we're excited about that problem specifically is one that we're really leaning in on just to help better support the managers. Yeah.
And this goes back to a metric where I think a solution like this can have a strong post-hire outcome where you're talking about 100% attrition year over year. I'm a big believer that the candidate experience has an impact on post-hire outcomes and efficacy and engagement and performance. And so maybe you're moving the needle to 90% attrition, 95% attrition. You're moving the needle just enough to create a better process and a better company experience for the clients and customers you serve.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, one thing I didn't mention is the onboarding experience and the importance of that. And sort of one of the things we're thinking a lot about right now is when you're supporting a store manager, let's say, there's all the stuff leading up to hire accepted, right? But then you get a ton of drop off between offer accepted and start date. and then just kind of the full onboarding experience and all of that. So we're kind of thinking about extending our agent more deeply into onboarding, just to make sure, because it's that those early days that really impact. The data shows that it's like those, depending on the industry, whether it's the first 30, first 60, first 90, but like though that's where the magic happens. You do that right, you onboard well, you support them, you're able to surface things early that are frustration points or challenges from new hires. Your likelihood to retain them longer is greater. And so we've been doing a lot of thinking down that path too. We're excited about kind of moving more deeply in that direction with our agent fleet, but well, yeah, we'll get there. Yeah.
I think that's brilliant because what you're doing is bringing recruiting software into the employee life cycle. So we've got the candidate journey all mapped out on the whiteboard you mentioned. We're delivering value and optimizing process and automation, thinking about the candidates first. But where I think there's opportunity in the recruiting tech space is to see more influence of recruiting software in that handoff into onboarding. And there's endless possibilities for deploying agents in onboarding to engage employees, particularly ones that are not at a desk, not on Slack 8-10 hours a day, getting those notifications where there's more manual check-ins. So I'm pretty excited about this.
We're one thing too that might be helpful just in as far as like where we see things going. There's a lot of talk of like agent to agent sort of communication and how this might go. And we do see a world where there are going to be a number of agents deployed for various different sort of key moments in the life cycle that go really deep with expertise and, let's say, screening software engineers, for example, right? And this sort of agent to agent handoff over time is going to be more and more important, and we're going to be working with a tech stack that is multi-agent and sort of having to think in terms of like how agents communicate with one another. That's where things are going. But I think like why does it ultimately matter? I think what's most interesting is we see a shift away from being tethered to software to complete core actions manually to one where things become facilitated more and more through conversation. Whether it's just having a call, texting, whatever it may be, but in natural language to drive outcomes necessary. And so that's one thing we're incredibly excited about, is to be able to sit on top of and support these core systems in a way that we become the conversational interface to help eliminate so much friction and adoption challenges and just create a far better experience that is driven far more by conversation. We think the future of UI is a conversation, and that's sort of the reality we're kind of trying to usher in to drive the outcomes for our customers and our mission.
I think about the Gartner hype cycle where we have like the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, the slope of enlightenment. And I think it's not necessarily static where we land in the evolution of LLMs. Where we're at today is LLMs are really good at words. They're great at processing language and using text. So I'd love that you whipped out your phone and walked us through what it would be like if you're working in a hiring manager role at a warehouse and to have that interaction. I think there's a world in the next few years where perhaps we don't have iPhones. Perhaps we're not scrolling endlessly. I think that's the big question. Humans love to scroll. Will we continue to scroll our phones and communicate in those ways? Because who's to say that it's not a hardware device on that hiring manager's lapel in the warehouse or on their clipboard where it's, hey, agent, here are the interviews that I had, here's the feedback, and the little speaker of that device speaking back to the hiring manager. So the use cases are endless, but I think right now I'm excited and moving more towards that slope of enlightenment around the possibilities of how do we integrate this really advanced technology with the hardware systems we have to date, and how do we position the candidate experience in all of that? Because usually it's candidate behaviors that dictate digital transformation in the HR tech suite. And a few examples of that would be SMS. So candidates aren't responding to emails, so let's build compliance software that allows us to text candidates. Another would be mobile optimized applications. We're hiring warehouse workers. They don't have a computer. They're not applying through a 10-page application process. How do we allow them to quick apply from their phone? And so I'm really excited about this third wave of digital transformation in my experience as a recruiter, centered around what is that next step of candidate and consumer behavior from a technology perspective that's going to dictate the next wave of recruiting software. And I think you're onto something here with that dictating of a hiring manager's experience based on interviews and getting shortlisted candidates.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, it's an interesting time. Again, we opened up with just the rate of change that we're seeing right now, but it's an exciting time. It's a scary time. I mean, just to speak to like buyers right now. I mean, I do not envy you. Like, if you are out there looking for software, I mean, and it's more confusing than ever. And I think everyone's getting a mandate. If they haven't made investments in AI, the mandate is like, figure out our AI strategy. What are we going to be doing in TA with AI? You know, and that can be incredibly daunting. And like, it's like, okay, it's a technology. Like what? Like that's like, and I think what we see happening is that a lot of companies are going to market looking for AI and not having those, without it being anchored on the problems.
Yes.
Or maybe loosely anchored on the problems, but then you see a lot of like shiny objects, and then it becomes incredibly confusing. Unless you're like really deeply anchored in like, these are the business problems we have. Where AI becomes interesting is when you start to think about the art of the possible and what are the new unlocks that weren't possible a year or two ago that now are, and oftentimes that involves AI, but you can only get to that point when you're really deeply rooted on the problems, right? Like, what are the core problems we're trying to solve that really drive the business forward? And there's just a lot of noise right now. And again, like, while we are an AI company, like at our core, we're focused on business problems, and it is even it's incredibly easy for us. I see the forces within our own business that are like, you just can easily drink the Kool-Aid and get excited about the tech for the sake of tech and not focus on the business problem. So for any of you out there that are in a position of buying software and thinking about AI, just like focus it back, like get back to the basics, focus on the core problems. AI will be a component of a solution that may be obvious or may not be obvious. And I think that's where I'm excited for the market to get to, is past this hype cycle. You know, we're kind of like, we hit the trough, or we're somewhere on the journey from the trough to the path to enlightenment. And that's where the actual work starts happening. That's where the problems get solved. I think you know, for all of those companies that have deployed AI successfully, you also have a lot of horror stories about companies that deployed AI and have not seen a compelling ROI. And it has been all hype. And you're like, well, what do you do with that? You know, so you pull back entirely, and it's like, no, this is the moment you want to lean in, but lean in around business problems and demand from your vendors, like, that they are showing clear examples of success that are data backed, and that they can help give you the expertise you need, supported with data, to drive the outcomes you're looking for, right? Because there's just a lot of fluff, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, it's challenging to navigate right now as a buyer. So yeah, it's a fun time, but it's also a crazy time. So just, you know, buckle up.
I love it, Ty. Talk to us a little bit about how you've flown under the radar. You've focused on solving problems for customers first, not necessarily doing the rah-rah show, which I'm going to steal that line. I like that. Tell me about your team. Tell me about your go-to-market strategy. I'm excited to see you interface with the recruiting world more, but tell us about the folks over at Grayscale.
Yeah, we sort of take pride in being a bit of an underdog in the market. You know, you scan an expo hall at any given sort of industry conference, and you know, there's a lot of money that just gets really poured into marketing and driving eyeballs, and we've kind of taken the exact opposite approach, right? And we think that you can build a great business in a very capital efficient manner when you're just focused on business problems. And then lo and behold, what happens? Word of mouth starts to drive your go-to-market, and customer stories start to drive your story. And then partners show up out of the woodworks and want to partner with you because you're doing great work and you can really help support their ecosystems in ways that are quite meaningful. And so that's been our focus. We've really prided ourselves in having a strong go-to-market motion from a partner-driven standpoint. So we partner a lot with a lot of vendors in the space, either as an add-on or even a white-labeled solution in some cases. And again, that's kept us in more of a lower profile capacity. And maybe we don't have the biggest boost at some events, but I think we've got the stories from customers to back up like what we can do. And so our teams, lean and mean, we're probably half the size to a quarter of the size of many of the well-funded companies in these expo halls, and that's a fun spot to be in. And that means we don't have any. We're a lean, very amped up, focused, excited, mission-driven team that's building to solve key core problems in the frontline worker space. So it's been fun. We're having a lot of fun and see a huge amount of opportunity on the horizon as we continue to grow, and the market is just pulling us very, very quickly, and we're just trying to stay focused and not allow ourselves to get spread too thin in a moment where it kind of feels like we're right product, right team, right time to really do something special. So, but again, it's all about staying focused and not letting yourself get spread too thin. So, yeah.
I think you're definitely onto something special. I've interacted with your team. They're very impressive. The product is amazing. I'm excited about the use cases, the partnerships, the folks you're interacting with, the problems you're solving for the frontline worker hiring problem. Do you want to talk a little bit about Grayscale's growth story in terms of funding and revenue?
Yeah. So we've raised $12 million all in, which I think that's a metric we take pride in a market where we could have raised a lot more. We've focused on building the business in a capital efficient way. I think the partner-driven, kind of partner-first approach to go to market has allowed us to be very capital efficient in sort of how we've grown. So raised all things considered, a fairly modest amount. Have like I mentioned before, like a pretty lean, mean team on staff. We're, growing, pushing 50% year over year growth on an acceleratory path. We're seeing the market really start to pull us, and we see a lot of opportunity on the horizon. So, and we're having to be approaching cash flow positive, which is also a fun spot to be, which means that, again, there's nothing more distracting than being out there fundraising. So it means that I can spend more time just focused on working with customers, solving business problems, So that's also a metric we take pride in. So
amazing. Well, Ty, I'm really excited about the future of Grayscale. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.